All right, we're live on YouTube.
Not quite.
Almost.
Loading.
It's streaming yet. Just a second.
Can you let me in?
Yeah.
There you are.
All right,
Good to go.
we're live on YouTube. All right, thank you, Tina.
Not quite.
Almost.
Loading.
Streaming yet. Just a second. Why is it doing that?
Hit. There you are. Hit that.
This?
Now you're good. It won't say that. It's just a preview.
Okay.
Yep.
Should I close this? Where am I
No,
at?
just
Okay.
minimize it.
Minimize this. Okay. And all I have to do is go into the dots, right?
Yep.
When we're ready. Okay.
Are we good?
Live, so you're
Yep. We're good.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Good evening. Today is Monday, December 21st, 2020. Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of the Oregon City Council, which will be the last meeting of City Council for 2020. Let's begin tonight's meeting by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council for attendance this evening?
As I find my notes. Mr. Davish?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Pawlov?
Here.
Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Seaman? Mr. Wallensack?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here.
Thank you. Please note that 6 of us are present. We know Jim is trying to enter into the meeting now, so Jim will be joining us here shortly. Also joining us, our Clerk of Council, Ms. Tina Evans, Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator, Mr. Michael Beasley, Law Director, Melissa Pecora, our Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman, our Finance Director, Ms. Darlene Huntermark. We have our Police Chief, Mr. Mike Navarre, our new Police Chief, Mr. Brandon Began, Fire Chiefs Denny Hartman, Jim Wolf, and Mark Mullins are all joining us this evening. Council, the first order of business would be the approval of the meeting minutes from the December 7th, 2020 regular meeting of council.
Have it.
Mr.
I know
President,
Jim usually does this, but we'll need somebody else.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
I move to approve the minutes for December 2020 regular council meeting as presented and written.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Reeves. Second by Mr. Zale. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, council approves the meeting minutes from December 7th, 2020 regular meeting of council as submitted. Council, we do need to add some items to this evening's agenda. We need to add items 129 and then items 133 through 144 of 2020 to this evening's agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zale. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, items number 129, 133 through 144 of 2020 are added to this evening's agenda. And we will start with item number 129 of 2020. Item 129 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, Mr. Roman?
Thank you, Mr. President and Council. You're aware of us improving our sanitary sewer, and this is the next step. Mr. Roman can tell you where it's running from and to. But something we've been dealing with for quite some time. It has been budgeted, and Mr. Roman will tell you a little details of it.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Roman?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor. And this project is up in the South Shore Park area. It's actually the roads on the north side of Bay Shore Road. They see a lot of wave runoff from Lake Erie. And with that, a lot of stormwater gets into our sanitary sewers. So it's a lining project of sanitary sewers. We received 5 bids for this project, and the bid tab and the bid review is included in Exhibit A. And we've determined the lowest and best bid is to pick Performance Pipeline. They have done 2 other projects in our past, have done a very good job. And overall, their bid is about $400,000 less than what we estimated for this project. We have our EPA loan approval for the project. We do have OPWC money $450,000 grant, $450,000 0% loan. The EPA loan is like 0.7%, which is pretty good for an EPA loan. And that is it. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Roman, I would like to thank you for giving us the detailed information on the bids and what is expected of the project. And for those of us who like science, it was pretty nice.
You're welcome.
Council, is there any questions for the administration on item number 129 of 2020? Hearing no questions, I'll assign item number 129 with ordinance number 129 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Accepting the bid of Performance Pipelining Incorporated, 1551 West Norris Drive, Ottawa, Illinois, for furnishing labor, materials, and equipment for the sanitary sewer rehabilitation project Phase 5, Part A, authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to enter into a contract with said contractor and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Pauloff.
I move for passage of ordinance number 129 of 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 129 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mrs. Pauloff,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Dabish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzak,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
yes,
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 129 did pass by a vote of 6 yeas, 0 nays. Item 133 of 2020 being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Paul Roman. Gentlemen?
Well, this is what it says, a repair in the streets building, the ductwork. Mr. Roman will probably give you more details, but that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
So what we discovered in some of the HVAC ductwork in the street building is it had some mold contamination. We tried removing it by simply cleaning it. We installed these ionizers to disinfect it, but in the end, it was simply more prudent to just replace the section. So that's what we did. So it was we did it on an emergency, but we did have 2 quotes, and we did go with the lowest bid or lowest and best quote to do this work. So, and that work is now complete, and that invoice is attached. So, we had there's other sections of ductwork. For some reason, in some of these sections, the insulation was on the inside of the ductwork, which is kind of unique. And again, it was just simpler to remove the ductwork than to try to attempt to clean insulation. So, for what it's worth, that's it.
Paul, Mr. Roman, do you know how the water infiltrated? Was it through condensation, or how did the water get there, and did we resolve that issue?
Yeah, I think it's through condensation, but really the insulation should not be on the inside of the ductwork. It should be on the outside. And half of the ductwork in the street department is that way, and we didn't touch that ductwork. So we only replaced the sections. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's how they had it. So yeah, the insulation should be on the outside.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Zale.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but how often do we inspect this often?
Well, we have annual checking of the HVAC, and I think with COVID and everything else that was going on, we're just making sure that our HVAC is in top condition. And this is something we discovered. And if we first started out just trying to clean everything, just as annual maintenance, and then that's when they saw it. We ran tests on it, discovered that it was mold.
Hi there.
And with those tests, then we tried to clean it, and by the end, it's like, no, it's going to be more cost to clean it than to just remove it. So we just
Right. Okay, thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Zale. Council, is there any further questions for the administration on item 133? Here are no questions. I'll assign item 33 with ordinance number 133 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to issue payment to Commercial Comfort Systems Incorporated, 26610 Echo Road, Perrysburg, Ohio, to provide labor, materials, and equipment for emergency ductwork replacement in the street and recreation building and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance number 133 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
second,
Second by Ms. Pollock. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 133 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
yes,
Mr. Wallenzek,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 133 of 2020 to pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 134 of 2020, again, is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian, Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, Mr. Roman?
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, is the next step in continuing our bike project, our bike trail project. Mr. Rome will tell you some more details about this also. I believe it's connecting up off of Navarre Avenue.
Mhm.
Doesn't it run up behind the Dairy Depot?
No, Mayor,
Oh,
this section's to the south. If you
Oh,
recall, when we did that detention area between Pickle and Navarre,
Oh, to
This-
put up.
this will be from Pickle to Brown. So if council remembers, we did that 16-inch water line when we put that easement in. We also established a path for a bike path, and we applied for a grant through TMACOG, and we received a TIP grant, pays 80% of the project. So we did receive a $220,000 grant for this, but it's a 10-foot path from Pickle to Brown, and it's pretty much in the same path as that water line, but it goes directly south of that detention area, if you guys recall, between Lallendorf and Coy. So that's it. And the ordinance is really to sign the LPA agreement where the city would do the project management for the project.
Mr. Roman?
Mhm.
Yeah, Mr. Roman, I want to thank you and your department and the administration for continuing to provide bike paths for our community that'll tie in that area of Oregon, and we'll be able to reach one side of Oregon all the way to the lake. And then I know that at one point in time we spoke about trying to team with Northwood to tie it into their park just
Trails.
across the line there too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
thank you.
Charles Zen. Yep.
Mr. President, it's just a note. One of the things we put in our application is that point that this does help make that connection and broaden it to more than one community. So it does head south, and we're excited about that. And we did let the folks from Northwood know we'd be heading their direction.
Thank you. Councilors, are there any questions for the administration on item 134?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zale.
the only concern I have, and I think this is great, but if you want people from Brown Road to access this bike trail, what kind of room do they have on Brown Road to actually use Brown Road to get this bike trail?
Yeah.
And my concern is, I know Brown Road, and I know the speeds that cars move on Brown Road. I'm a little concerned about people using Brown Road to access that trail.
Yeah.
We don't have a bike lane on Brown Road.
Yeah, no, and Mr. President, Mr. Zale, and that's a very good question. And if you recall, so when we did the other path from Pickle to Navarre, we widened Pickle a little bit on each side, and we
Yes.
did the edge lines in more so that you had at least a 2-foot pavement outside the road edge. Now, that's not a lot, but it's a lot more than what was there before. Now, quite honestly, I'd like to see sidewalks. I'd like to see, other things come down that way. But Brown may take longer for that. I think Pickle I don't think Pickle's that far away from putting in sidewalks to make connections there. And whether there'd be another path or not. But with TMACOG and people that do bicycle, they do travel our roads. I do think when you repave these roads, we do need to make them a little wider. We do need to bring those edge lines in. That actually slows speeds down when you bring the edge lines in, make it a little bit narrower. And that will provide more path for pedestrians. So.
Yeah, that's just my concern. I look at that and I go, okay, that's great. But if I lived on Brown Road, I would be very concerned about getting my bicycle and driving down Brown Road to go to this bike path.
Right.
Which to me sometimes makes it, I mean, I love the idea, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that concerns me a lot. And I'm guessing myself, if I were to say the average speed on Brown Road is 45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Mr. President,
Mr. Beasley?
I do bike Brown Road from time to time and, head east-west on it. I know that it's a concern in long-term, we're going to be making them the same way we do with Pickle. It's just part of the process. Now, what order you get in, you can't always get it in the same order. Rodney's team stepped up when there was some money available in this category, and we accessed it when it became ripe because we were ready to go. We were able to get those dollars. I know some of the folks that's on Oak Tree and maybe Oak Field, that little subdivisions there, they're looking forward to connecting right through the backyards. And some of them have already been asking us, how soon is that going to be done? We're ready to go, in those spaces. So it's not just on Brown Road. Some of the folks will get it right through those subdivisions that are right next to it, and there are properties that will abut to it that are excited about getting there. I know that there's kids biking Brown Road right now, with or without a bike trail there. This will get more people off roadways ultimately by having this space there long term. It's going to have to be part as we look at continuing to move forward on a more complete streets program, so that when we do the next time we do Brown Road, we just we achieve that, and that's something that I know we're looking at.
Okay, but you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Mr. President, too.
We're trying to grant
Mr.
access to
Roman?
people from Brown Road to this trail. And the traffic on that road and the speed on that road concerns me a lot, and the width of the road. I mean, I'm not against the trail, don't get me wrong, but that does concern me.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. President, and just all our east-west roads are similar. I do think, but talking about grant dollars, you only get the grant dollars if you make it as if it's going to be regional. You won't get the grant dollars for the local, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a master plan to look at either widening roads or even putting in sidewalks or paths along these east-west roads. It's just that grant money is not available when it's just viewed as a local road. But if you don't establish these mainline paths, then you'll never get the interest on the local roads then, so that's how it goes. So, but yeah, no, I certainly appreciate your comments.
Thank you. And I have something kind of points right to what Mr. Zale was talking about. Ever since we had the accident last year, I've been really thinking about seeing if we can work with the police department and, outside of our youth before they get into kindergarten, going to Safety Town, we have no bike education program inside our schools for our young kids that are starting to reach the age where they're traveling those roads from friends' houses. Is that something that, I would really like us to look at developing some type of program where we could go into the schools and remind them about bicycle safety? I'm not sure what other people feel or the administration feels about that.
Mr. President, I like that idea. And with that suggestion, I will reach out, both police are on this, really both streets and police side. Kids are going to bike. Right now, kids are biking on Brown Road, and they're taking Lollendorf or Coy then to connect up with the trail system as a connection of that. And it's all of it kind of is disconcerting from time to time. The more long-term, we are going to have better roadways and more sidewalks and better east-west access. But in the meantime, and even where we have good trails and good crossings, we've had some challenging, we've had some real tough things happen in Oregon. So I think it's a good suggestion. I mean, we can do some things with both police and streets to kind of do some things to connect, help keep people safe. Our greatest risk in Oregon is, we have a great street system, but the thing that we're most at risk from is falling in our homes and getting in traffic accidents. We've had tough pedestrians and we have more traffic deaths than we want. And both pedestrians, passengers, cyclists, and people in cars. So I think some things that could help us there. There's some programs out there. We'll see if we can get something marshaled to to do it. I like the suggestion from Tim and Dennis on that.
Mr. President,
Seaman?
thank you. Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, Dennis. And, maybe, well, I mean, that could be incorporated with our DARE program somehow, with the kids that, as like you said, as they get a little bit older and they want to travel to each other's houses, we could set up, I mean, some kids don't know if they should go against the traffic or with the traffic and other issues too about safety of riding a bike. So maybe the DARE officers could work on that in addition to the fine job they already do.
Yeah, and I would leave it up to those departments to come up with a program that suits them, and work with the school district to try to implement something. So, Mr. Beasley and the police department, street department, I appreciate it if you guys would move forward and at least look at something like that.
I like that. I get my 3,500 miles a year on my bike. I want to keep it as safe as we can for people.
Thank you. Council, is there any other questions on item number 134 of 2020? Hearing no further questions, I will sign item number 134 with ordinance number 134 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for funding from the Federal Highway Administration for the bid and construction of LUC Oregon Trail Bikeway Phase 4, project PID 111544, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves?
I move for passage of ordinance 134 of 2020 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 134 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock?
yes,
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 134 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to item number 135, again being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian, Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And council, you can see this is our chemicals that we use in our treatment plants required those to operate. So let me tell you a little details of how they priced out from last year. But things that we actually need if we're going to run those treatment plants.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor. And there's really only two chemicals that we had bid for this year, and that's Pebble Lime, which is used for softening the water, and then carbon dioxide, which is used to adjust the pH. But I know the Pebble Lime went up by 8%, the unit price that was bid, and that's the Carmeuse Lime, and then Lindy Inc. on the carbon dioxide went down by 2%. So, it's competitive, pretty typical for chemical bids, but that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, is there any questions on item number 135? Here are no questions. I'll sign item 135 with ordinance number 135 of 2020. And ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and director of public service to enter into contracts with Carmeuse Lime Incorporated, 11 Stanwyck Street, 21st floor, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15222, and Lindy Incorporated, 7000 High Grove Boulevard, Burridge, Illinois, for 2021 water wastewater treatment chemicals and materials bid and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President.
Yes, Ms. Pollock.
I move for passage of ordinance number 135 of 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 135 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mrs. Pollock?
Yes,
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 135 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 136 of 2020, again, Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, Mr. Roman.
And thank you, Mr. President. This is just like we used chemicals for the treatment plant. This is waste product that we have to get rid of out of the wastewater treatment plant.
Water.
I'm sorry, water plant. And the ongoing thing, the annual thing we just got to do.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Roman, you have anything to add?
Well, just so you know, Mr. President, and in past years, we've had tough times getting bids for this work. Some years would get no bids. Last year, I think we only had one bid, and this year we got 4 bids. And again, I think buying the excavator and taking, scooping the spent lime out of the lagoons and letting it dry is definitely the way to go. And you're getting now more competitive bids. But we do the lowest and best bid out of the 4 is Rocky Ridge Development. They were the second lowest bid. Midwest Compost, they've had past contracts that they're still behind on, that they are still trying to finish the 2018 contract. We've tried applying liquidated damages. It's hard to do when they're the sole contractor at the time. And they understand that it's, for us to go with Rocky Ridge for this contract. So just thought I'd let you know. But Rocky Ridge we felt was the lowest and best bid, and that's explained in Doug's memo that's in the exhibit. So,
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Councilors, any questions for the administration on item number 136? There are no questions. I will sign item 136 with ordinance number 136 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and director of public service to enter into a contract with Rocky Ridge Development LLC, 3793 Silica Road, Suite B, Sylvania, Ohio, for removal of approximately 20,000 tons for the water treatment plant spent lime disposal service for a period of 1 year at a cost of $29.75 per cubic yard per contract specifications, in declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Pauloff.
I move for passage of ordinance 136 of 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call, council, on passage of ordinance number 136 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mrs. Pavlov,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzak,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 136 of 2020 to pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 137 of 2020 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and our law director, Melissa Puporo. Mayor, Ms. Puporo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think, council, all of you are familiar with on TV, you'll hear someone getting their Miranda rights. And towards the end of it, it says you are entitled to legal representation. If you cannot afford, one will be supplied for you. This is to make us compliant to that part of the Miranda rights.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Puporo, you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This agreement is a yearly contract that the city enters into with the Lucas County Public Defender Commission for attorneys to represent those individuals that have been charged with crimes that have the possibility of jail time. The city is required to provide this representation, and entering into this agreement is the most cost-effective and efficient way to do that. The amount of the one-year contract is $39,692. As you will recall, this was the same amount that the contract was last year. There are no changes, no increases. And if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Puporo. Councilors, any questions for the administration on item number 137? Here are no questions. I'll sign item 137 with ordinance number 137 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with the Lucas County Public Defender Commission to be in effect from January 1, 2021 to December 31, 2021 for council to represent indigent defendants charged with violations of municipal ordinances of the city of Oregon and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zale.
I move for passage of ordinance 137, 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
second,
Second by Ms. Paulos. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 137 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavlov,
yes,
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzak.
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 137 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 138 of 2020 being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Fire Chief Mr. Dennis Hartman. Mayor, Chief Hartman.
Well, you could go right to Chief Hartman, but once again, we're always upgrading radios since the next step.
Actually, this is Mark.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Mark talk about it because this obviously is we had to correct this ordinance. He brought this to you earlier this year. So he's correct. So we're gonna have Chief Mullins talk to you about it.
So what happens sometimes in a haste to get these things done quickly, we look back at other ordinances that we have done in the past. And it was an oversight on my part that Motorola Solutions was actually the contractor that was going to be the invoicee for this. And in my haste to get this done, it kind of created a little bit of a havoc in trying to get a contract done. So we actually have to kind of walk this back off and walk it back on, as the amounts have not changed at all. Radios haven't changed. We still get that great discount through the State Fire Marshal's office. So it just needs to be brought back through again. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, just as a note for members, yeah, this is a repeal and reenact. We looked at it, we knew it was a Motorola product, but we thought it was going through PNR, but that's not how the bid came in. So we had to correct this record. It had to be redone. So
correct.
Thank you. Council, is there any questions on item number 138 of 2020? Here are no questions. We'll sign item 138 with ordinance number 138 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Repealing ordinance 120, 2020 and awarding a contract and authorizing the mayor and finance director to issue a purchase order for the purchase of 12 APX 6000 700-800 model 2.5 800 megahertz portable radios and accessories for the Oregon Fire Division to Motorola Solutions Incorporated, 500 West Monroe Street, Chicago, Illinois, in an amount of $46,723.40 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Zale.
I move for passage of ordinance 138, 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
second,
Second by Mrs. Paulo. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 138 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavlov,
yes,
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzak.
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 138 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to item number 139 of 2020. Item number 135 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian, City Administrator Mr. Michael Beasley, and Fire Chief Mr. Dennis Hartman. Mayor?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. And where that we had talked about building a new fire station, and the last time we met, we were putting together the bonding to build a fire station. We have to design it, and they said we're doing everything we can to make this process possibly start by sometime in the spring. This is the first step in really showing that a new fire station would exist. It does include a lot. Maybe Mr. Beasley could comment on some things we get for this, and then Chief Hartman also. But this is, once again, we're moving right to the next step to keep this fire station moving to be built.
Mr. President.
Beasley.
Just as a note, we had an internal team that began this process that included Rodney and Brooke from Paul's shop on the engineering side, and then the three command chiefs on the fire side. They went through a process. We advertised and got got qualifications. I think we had 13 or 14 total submittals, and then they had, I think, 3 finalists that they looked at. And I know that everybody in the team felt good about where they've ended up with here, with a team that included somebody local. They've got an Oregon resident who will essentially be taking the lead on the front side. Moving forward, as they look through design and steps, we're going to broaden that kind of little committee. Is going to include the committee chair, Tim Zale, and council president, Dennis, as we talked about how we move forward, the shape of the station, the ultimate size, and all those things are going to be worked through with this committee, with back and forth with the architect. I will tell you that I feel good about the qualifications of this team and the job that the committee did looking at it. I am one, and I know the council president agrees with me, whenever I see something like this, I say, why can't I just buy a set of plans off the shelf someplace? And then Paul and Rodney yell at me whenever I say that, no, Mike, you can't do it that way. There's got to be a design element to it that's got to match with what we're actually doing. So I understand that it's our job to keep these fees as low as we can as we work through the process. And Tim and Dennis, you're drafted onto the committee to do that. There's the percentage that are out there. They were actually going to be getting about as good a value as you can get in this space, with having somebody on the ground and doing some of the work inside with our own engineering shop. So long term, we'll be spending less on the design and engineering side than almost anybody I know with a station like this. I always feel like, well, geez, just build it. That's got to be designed. I don't know if Paul has anything to add to how that works for the real world, but Paul and Rodney always yell at me whenever I say that I'd like to just go out and just get some plans. They're public records, but we'll take it from there. And I feel good about this team. And ultimately, I'm excited about this process as the step moving forward. They were demonstrated strong qualifications, and I think the best ultimate value for the taxpayers, and a good local connection that allows us to have on the ground some of the folks that are part of their building team are Oregon residents. Some of the folks that are part of their design team are Oregon residents. So that's ultimately good for us and convenience going forward. Paul, I don't know if you want to say anything about the design. I never want to hire architects or engineers.
Yeah. Well, Mr. President, I can tell you, Buehler Group is a very good firm, and Mike Rowe, who does live in Oregon, is very easy to work with, very knowledgeable. They're the ones that were designing the street building. They were involved with AA Booze with the rec building, concession stand. No, I as much as you would think you could just buy one thing off a shelf and think that it works, chances are you're going to have a lot of change orders, because there's just different things that you find that are unique to every site. And again, we can design, our engineers can design things, utilities and things like that don't necessarily have to be a part of the scope. And there's some savings there. And the idea of a consultant is to find you the best savings for a design. So I think it's important to have a professional architectural do this. Doesn't mean it has to be from scratch. They can use other examples and give them a head start. But I do think you need to shape it, for the site and the needs of the fire department, which may be a little bit more unique. So that's it.
Thank you,
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Zale.
It was a great meeting. This is an exciting time. I think this is a great project, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. We don't get to do this very often. And we may not get to do it again. So let's do it right.
Let's do it right. I agree. And the Beasley idea of a tent with a pad under it's not a good plan. I know. I say that a little joke.
That was your plan.
But I'm excited about this. And again, we're going to be asking Dennis and Tim to kind of take the lead on the council side to help work us through this. And we're going to be hustling. We want to get, so as council members, our job is to make sure we talk back and forth as we go through this process. Talk to your colleagues. I'm excited about this and what it means as we transition our department. And it's just a step we've been waiting for. And you don't get to do it very often. It's right. We've got to get it right.
Right. That's right.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Hartman. Chief.
I just wanted to put in my 2 cents worth. This so everybody understands. It says if you look through the bid document or the proposal, it is in 2 phases. This is the first phase where we'll get all the architectural stuff done up through bid documents. Then once we get the construction bids, we'll go to phase 2 with viewer and which will be the construction management and those kind of things. And I was also, we are very excited. We're going to have our meeting. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow and get started.
Thank you, Chief Hartman. Councilors, are there any questions for the administration on item number 139? Here are no questions. I will sign ordinance or item number 139 with the ordinance number 139 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and fire chief to enter into an agreement with the Bureau Group Architecture and Engineering Incorporated, 314 Conant Street, Maumee, Ohio, to provide professional architectural and engineering services for the Central Fire Station Phase 1 in a total amount not to exceed $358,020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Zale.
I move for passage of ordinance 139, 2020 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
Second,
Second by Mrs. Pauloff. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 139 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mrs. Pauloff,
yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 139 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to item number 140 of 2020. Item 140 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Finance Director, Ms. Darlene Huntermark. Mayor, Ms. Huntermark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And both items 140 and 141, you can go to Darlene for. And then Mike Beasley might want to say something about 141 also. And then after we discuss them, then you can vote on them individually. You can present both of these.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Huntermark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to update the name of Fund 235 to more accurately reflect the receiving of the emergency transport services revenue. And it also expands the purpose of the fund, which will now include capital improvements of fire and EMS operations.
Thank you, Ms. Huntermark. Council, are there any questions for the administration on item number 140? Here are no questions. I'll sign item 140 with ordinance 140 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Amending and renaming Fund 235, the Fire Operating Levy Fund, to Fund Number 235, Fire Billing Capital and Operations Fund, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of item 140 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zale. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 140 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Pauloff,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 140 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item 141, Ms. Huntermark.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the last appropriation ordinance of the year, and it reflects the bond issue entries that we're going to have to make. We will be closing on that on December 29th. And it also includes a few interfund transfer reductions for projects that weren't needed in 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Huntermark. Mr. Beasley, you have anything to add on this?
No, Mr. President, we talked about it a little bit in the finance. We're changing the way we just do the accounting on items more than, it's not really moving money in real way, but we have to account for it correctly, and it achieves that.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, any questions for the administration on item 141?
Mr. President.
Mr. Seaman.
Yes, Mr. Beasley, what is our interest rate on this bond? What is the city paying?
Oh, the bond. Our bids came in very, very strong. In fact, as noted by our financial advisor, he's been doing this as long as I have. For both of us, it is the lowest interest rate we've ever seen on an unsubsidized 25-year debt. Our bid came in at 1.27%.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It is, some of the things we get from Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, those are subsidized by the taxpayers through the state. This is an unsubsidized debt. It came in at 1.27%. Essentially, it's lower than the rate of inflation over a 25-year cycle. So that was as nice an interest rate as we could ever want. We had that target. It came in better than I booked, but we had that target in mind as based on the timing of where we were. This is a good time to be going long for a long-term improvement. So we're doing it in 2 phases. The next one can't possibly be that low, but we had 4 bidders, and this was the best. The best bid came in at 1.27%. The next one will go to bid the smaller portion of it right after the first of the year. But to be in at a rate that low is just good for us and good for the taxpayers long term. That's we feel good about it. I've done issuances that were 12%. But back in 1980. So it's nice.
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman.
Mr. Beasley, what's like right now? What's one of our highest investment rates? I wonder. One of our best investment rates right now. I know they're low, but I mean,
if members know, cities can't invest in equity instruments. We're government related debt, so we don't.
No, I'm saying, what like the money that we're able to invest.
Right. So the money that we invest in is coming in at one and change. Half a point. Yeah, they're all over the place on that. But we're at a government debt issue. We don't make a lot of money on our investment portfolio. It's the nature
of investment, though. You got star investment, yeah.
Sure. We do the best we can, but we are restricted to governmental fund rate investments. So
one time you said our debt rating was so good that we were offered 0.66 one time. Remember when you told me that about a year ago or so?
Right. No, but that was different. For like short-term money. So if you roll something for a year, this is 25-year debt. So
sure, yeah, that's very good. No, that's great.
That's great. Yeah, this is 25-year debt. You're borrowing short-term money right now. That's what it is. But you're going 25 years. This is the best one literally he's seen in his 40-year career. So I've never seen anything like that. It was great.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Council, is there any further questions on item number 141? Hearing no further questions, I'll sign item 141 with ordinance number 141 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing and directing the finance director to make supplemental appropriations in interfund and interfund transfers on an as-needed basis for fiscal year 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Mr. President.
Mr. Seaman.
Yes, I'd like to move for passage of ordinance 141 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 141 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavlov?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 141 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to item number 142. Item 142 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and City Administrator Mr. Michael Beasley. Mayor, Mr. Beasley.
You could go to Mr. Beasley, but we know this is our budget for this year and a lot of work put into this. And Beasley, if you want to make final comments about it.
All right. You've heard me enough on this. I just want to thank the members for their patience and work on it. The departments, we are looking to generally do a hold the line budget and to underspend it in light of the realities we're dealing with. And this achieves that. It sets our priorities. The only significant the significant savings we'll spend a little bit less on healthcare than last year's budget. Structurally, we'll end up spending a little bit less on IT side because of the shape we're changing. We'll then have some salary savings by keeping some positions open, but we'll be ready to fill them when the time warrants and we're ready to act. So we'll work with the members throughout the year and keep our ear to the ground and watch what's happening. And we're going to keep moving forward on being ready to act on projects. We're excited about it. And it does make it easier when we've just kind of got the kind of relationship where we can solve problems during the year as they come. If somebody realizes we got to do something, we can do it. We're blessed. We do have some cash. Our revenue we're going to have a light revenue year though. And that's why we want to be as cautious as we can be. We'll have a light revenue year. It's just inevitable, just the way it's starting off. So we'll keep folks apprised on it as we go. And we're hoping to end up with more revenue than we're projecting, and we're expecting to spend less than we're budgeting. So that's kind of where we sit. Thank you for your work on. Thanks to Darlene and her team in an unusual dynamic with folks in and out with COVID, half the department out at one point or another. It was an unusual time.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Councilors, any questions for the administration on item 143?
Mr. President.
Mr. Seaman.
Yes, in addition to the hard work that all the administration and the council has provided, I think we should give some credit to our rank and file, because they're some of the ones that have to kind of modify their mode of operation in the city, and their cooperation is so important for this all to happen, to live within our income, to have a good budget like we do have. So thank you to all the rank and file, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, we have we're blessed with a great workforce that works to solve problems. So that makes the job easier for everybody. We like that.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Council, is there any further questions for the administration on item 143? Hearing no questions, I'll sign item 143 with ordinance number 143 of 2020.
42.
Ask Ms. Evans to read.
It's 142.
142.
142?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, 142 was the appropriations.
Yeah. The
We're doing
budget.
the budget
That's
now,
the
right?
budget.
Yeah. 142 is the
Item
budget.
143.
141 was the appropriation.
Yeah, this-
142 is the
Mine, I
budget.
have 142. I'm sorry. Item, Ms. Powell, thank you very much. I'll sign item 142 with ordinance 142 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Making appropriations for necessary expenditures for personal services, other expenditures, and capital improvement programs of the City of Oregon, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2021 and ending December 31, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President?
Mr. Seaman?
Yes, I'd like to move for passage of ordinance 142 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Ms. Powell. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 142 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes.
Council, please note that ordinance 142 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Now we'll move to item number 143 of 2020, being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian. Mayor?
Yes, and Council, you're aware of the fact that we are conducting our IT department a little bit different than we have been in the past with a vendor, and we do need someone to coordinate that. And later in my report, I'll be asking your concurrence to an appointment of Alex Schultz to take up this position that we are creating, so that we have been operating this way now for a while. It's been going quite smooth. I'm sure there's little things we might have to tweak along the way because it is new to us, but so far we've had fairly sailing. So once again, this does create this position to start, keep operating our IT department the way we are changing to, and that's it.
Thank you, Mayor. The council, is there any questions for the administration on item 143?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zale?
is this a full-time position or more of a part-time position that we're talking about?
This
Mr.
particular one is actually a part-time. Alex has other roles that he fulfills in the city. But this particular one is part-time. Mr. Beasley can tell you more of the details of it. But all in all, well, I'll just let him go on.
Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. Zale, this is a question that I called and directed to Mr. Beasley earlier today to get discussion on this, and I'm sure other members of council had the same thoughts. So, Mr. Beasley?
Yeah, Mr. President, this is a half-time position. That is, we believe that is what we need to, so it's a step down. We had a full-time position that paid somewhere in the mid-80s to be an IT coordinator. We're going to be paying a position about 25 a year to be a half-time. We had an IT director. We've now enhanced, as the members recall, we enhanced our contract with Perry Pro Tech Services. They will serve as our help desk and primary interface. We're going to have a user committee that in interfaces. So we're going to have leaders from Public Service Department, Finance, Police, Fire, and Admin. And I think Tina, we're dragging into that as well. That committee will interface with our vendor, and we need a kind of a halftime on the ground coordinator. And that halftime on the ground coordinator will do, you know, if there's little things that is going to be handled, somebody's got to make sure their cord's plugged in right, or Alex, who we're recommending, we don't pretend he has the skill set to be IT director. He knows he doesn't. He's good at these things and is a good interface. His job will be primarily to coordinate communications with our vendor. All in, we will be spending less than we spent this year on both contract and workforce. So it's before we had a smaller contract with Perry, and we're paying an IT director. We've now expanded the contract with Perry, and we'll be paying instead a halftime IT coordinator at a substantially lower per dollar and per hour rate. As we looked at how the market was evolving, folks were essentially, places like us, it's very hard to have a person on the ground who has the range of skill sets to meet the needs of this diverse an operation. That matter how good that person was, maybe, and they look at the evolving world, maybe they were an expert in mainframes, and then it was time to be an expert in smart desktops. Then it was time to be an expert in servers, and then an expert in cloud access, and then in security. And then that person is off on vacation for a couple of weeks, or like any of us, I'll say, call in sick in a day. What we think best serves the taxpayers' interest and our departments that depend on it long term is a company that has, even they do it all remotely now in any event. If you have a problem with your desktop, they come into your desktop. They don't have to be there. They have people in town that can come out, but we'll also have a person part-time on the ground that can go out and facilitate things. Already the help desk transactions have been smoother for us and with a quicker turnaround just in the couple of weeks that we've been operating it. So at a lower price point, we think we'll have better value for our departments at a lower price point to the taxpayers. So that's why we're looking to do, and now it's a moving target. It's an evolving situation. I believe that this is a position that a halftime position more than meets the needs. We'll learn over the next couple of years what works and what doesn't. I think that we won't be filling the position of IT director as we go. So that's kind of where we went on it.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley.
Mr.
Council, is there
President.
any questions?
Mr.
Mr. Sale. Mr. Sale.
I'm all for, saving money and being more efficient on this, and I hope it does work. One thing, I don't know if I asked this before, but one thing that does concern me when we have a company like this that's going to be into our computers, I get concerned about some of the sensitive information that might be in the law enforcement corridor. They have access to everything, and some of that stuff I concerns me just a little bit. I don't know if I should be concerned. You can help me with that, but that's just a thought I have, because there's a lot of very sensitive things they have and things that certain people should never see.
And,
And I don't know, and I don't know about that. So that's just a question.
Sure. That's a very fair and important question. I don't think that they're going to have access in ways that are substantially different than the access they've already had. So this company has been our partner for our systems for 3 or 4 years now.
Okay.
They have a role. We still need police to be sophisticated enough on their end to make sure we built it. And that's going to be part of our little user committee that we're going to have police represented on, to make sure that we still guarantee those safeguards, because you have investigatory information that is just so, that could be in there, that we have to make sure that on the police side, they're especially vigilant to keep that where it needs to be locked down. And even more, I mean, let's just face it, there's things I don't want to know about the police are doing. There's investigations that are sensitive.
Well, it's not even necessarily, well, it is about their investigations, but they're just stuff that I can't mention here.
Yeah, I understand.
It has nothing to do with, it just, that can't be seen.
Sure. And I believe those safeguards are in place. We're going to continue to have to be mindful and watchful going forward. All right.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we need the police to continue to be the best at keeping that protected, because they have the skills and that knowledge. I feel good about it, and I feel those systems are in place. And I feel Oregon is blessed that we have a relatively sophisticated police operation on the IT side. But that's about the personnel. If one of those persons leaves, we got to make sure there's somebody else succeeded. That's something that people who operate police departments always have to be asking that question. And I follow it, and it's come up on other things we've talked about before, stuff we've done that you've raised it. We're mindful of it and aware of it. And it goes even from, and I've built it on a different level at the county, when we have the vendors that are dealing with our Norris system, the vendors that are dealing with the LEAD system. We've got to make sure we have a responsible systems in place to compartmentalize. We think that's there. We've got to keep asking that question. In fact, even on a broader question, it's getting so sophisticated on hacking now. I worry about this all the time. When the federal government and the top defense contractors and all the top IT security companies can all get hacked over a 3-week period, I worry about these things. In fact, the Blade called me today and asked me, what are we doing? I'm telling you, we have been either some combination of lucky and good. But if somebody I don't want to tell everyone they can never hack us. Right. They'll get us. We have to make sure we have the best possible systems and safeguards in place, and somebody gets down to individuals at the table and at the desk to make sure. I mean, we even talked about it in our staff that I guess we're broadcast. I want to be careful about it. I don't want to give anybody ideas. It's just something that we have to be mindful of. And, so your vigilance on it, and you have to keep asking us questions so that we stay watching the ball on it, because it is a challenge. Even Alex as the coordinator, if we appoint him now, just because his dad is a police officer, his mom's a police officer, doesn't mean he should have sensitive information. I mean, that's just the way it is. So we gotta be mindful of those things as we go. Police have got to make sure we build the sophisticated, sufficient firewalls within those shops to protect the information that's got to stay there and can't bleed out.
Right.
So we think it's there, but we got to keep asking ourselves those questions all the time.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Ms. Purpura.
Yes, Mr. Zale, after speaking to Perry Protech, some of the systems that they will have access to, I was glad to find out that they have those certifications to be able to deal with those systems that are law enforcement sensitive. Therefore, they fall under that guise of, if there's any unauthorized use of it, they fall within the criminal penalties of utilizing it in a way that's improper. So I know that investigations is separate, but some of those systems with criminal histories and leads, they do already have some of those certifications because they represent other municipalities. So there is some safeguards there that I was happy to hear that they already have.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purpura. Council, is there any further questions on item number 143? Hearing no further questions, I'll sign item 143 with ordinance number 143 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Amending the classification plan of the City of Oregon is approved by ordinance 69 of 2019 as amended by creating the classification of Information Technology Coordinator, establishing a pay range for the position of Information Technology Coordinator, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman.
I move for passage of ordinance number 143 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zale. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 143 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Sorry, yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenbeck.
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note ordinance 143 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to the last item this evening, item number 144, again being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'm aware that you guys did discuss this somewhat in your Finance Committee meeting. And I know there's that people can get a little concerned with something of this nature. I remember going back quite a few years, and I know Mr. Seaman was here, where we used to have a list that was horrendous, and we'd have people with hundreds of hours, a huge list, and we have come to a stage where usually we have a couple instances where we carry over vacation. I went so far as early on when I first became mayor of paying out some vacation time to get it all clean on the books. And this was an unusual year that did allow for strange things to happen. This is one of them. So we expect to be back. Hopefully we have a better year next year. With COVID concerns being maybe relieve some, and people able to use their vacation time, and the need to call people in is more back to normal. But by the end of next year, I'd like to be back to close to normal, maybe even paying out some of these vacation time to get it back to zeros at the end of the year. So I understand we will keep an eye on it and try not to let this get carried away.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, is there any questions for the administration on item 144? Here, no questions. We'll sign item 144 with ordinance number 144 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing employees of the City of Oregon to carry over in excess of vacation time into 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 144 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Second by Mr. Seaman. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 144 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 144 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. We'll move to the mayor's report. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have a few personnel issues here to deal with, and I will start with the personnel from fire department and ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of the retirement resignation of Robert Young, who happens to be employee number 1410, and his resignation for retirement would be effective Monday, January 4th. And he's coming from Station 43, and he has been there for 23 years. So he's retiring as battalion chief, and I would ask council's concurrence in accepting his wishes for his retirement resignation.
Thank you, Mayor. Council?
Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. Zale.
I concur with the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
Second.
Second by Ms. Powell. Council, any objections? Here are no objections. Mayor, council concurs with the acceptance of the retirement of Robert Young Jr., employee number 1410 from station number 43.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, council. And next, I would ask council's concurrence for the resignation of Police Chief Michael Navarre. And Mike Navarre did stop and see me earlier today expressing his pleasure for the last 9 years of being able to serve the city of Oregon. And, and I relate to him that as pleasured as he was to work here, we were pleasured to have him. And I will really miss Mike Navarre not being here, but he won't be too far away. And I would ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of the resignation of Mike Navarre effective January 4th, 2021. And like I said, it was great having Mike Navarre here, and I would really miss him not being here. But like I said, once again, he won't be too far away.
Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Zale.
I move to concur with the mayor in accepting the resignation of Chief Mike Navarre.
Oh, when I did,
and I want to thank him.
Tim, can I stop? I said the 4th. It's the 3rd. So
okay.
I would like.
It's not going to matter for me, but
all right.
No, I want to thank Mike for the years he's been here. I had the pleasure of working under Mike for several years before I retired. I wish him the best of luck with the Lucas County Sheriff's Department, and I think he's going to need it. But but thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure having you here. I think everybody's enjoyed working with you, and thank you so much for your service to the city of Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
I'm going to second that with my words too. I remember the beginning and from start to finish, nothing but positives, and really what you brought to Oregon was really an asset. So good luck in the county, and thank you so much for all you've done for Oregon.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Council, is there any objections? Here are no objections, Mayor. Council concurs with the acceptance of the retirement resignation of Police Chief Mr. Michael Navarre. And Chief Navarre, again, I would like to repeat what Tim and Kathy have both said. Thank you very much for your service to the city of Oregon.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, good. That's all.
Mayor?
Okay, then, well, as long as we're talking about police and with the retirement from the city of Oregon of Mike Navarre and the appointment of Brandon Began as chief of police from sergeant, that opened a sergeant position that we need to fill. And I'm going to ask council's concurrence in the appointment of patrolman Bradley Tristan to police sergeant. And Brad's appointment would be effective January 4th, 2021. He'll be placed in step one of the FOP pay range, salary $77,787.06. And I would ask once again council's concurrence in the appointment to sergeant of patrol officer Brad Tristan to police sergeant, and effective January 4th, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Zale.
I concur with the mayor on the appointment of Brad Tristan to sergeant of the Oregon Police Division. And I can't believe we actually made him sit through this entire meeting.
I'm going to second it. And I'm going to second those words as well. Wow, you sat through that whole thing. Thank you, Sergeant Tristan.
He's proven
Good luck
his
to you.
worth already.
Good luck, Brad.
Mr. President,
Yes, Brandon.
yeah, I just want to say a couple things about Brad. First, Chief Navarre, good luck in your next position down at the county. We appreciate what you did. Been a great example of leadership, over the years. And I think we all appreciate that, like everybody else has said. As far as Brad Tristan goes, very proud to appoint him or to recommend him for the first appointment to the sergeant position in my new position. He is a true leader out here. Everybody looks up to him from top to bottom. Wouldn't want anybody else on our major calls than Brad. I mean, he's our go-to guy. He's done a ton of stuff out here. He's got a great past when he was in the military for 5 years with the Army, and 2.5 of those years he was a sergeant. So he has the skills as well as the experience as a sergeant. And I have no doubt that he'll be one of the best sergeants that we have out here. So congratulations to Brad.
Thank you, Chief. So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor, Council concurs with the promotion of Brad Tristan to sergeant.
And then the last thing in my report is, like I spoke when we created the IT coordinator position, I mentioned Alex Schultz's name and for the person that would be filling that position. And I'm going to ask council's concurrence in the appointment of Alex Schultz of 620 Riverside Drive, apartment 206, Toledo, Ohio, to the position of part-time IT coordinator. And this said pay range 9, step 1, hourly rate $24 and 6.2 cents an hour. I don't know where that 0.2 come from, but that is his effective date will be, where do I see this? Probably tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
which would be the December 22nd, 2020. And once again, I ask council concurrence in the appointment of Alex Schultz to IT coordinator.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President,
Mr.
Mr. President. Yes,
Seaman.
I move to concur with the mayor for the brilliant appointment of Mr. Alex Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Damish. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor, Council concurs with the appointment of Alex Schultz to IT coordinator position.
And with that, other than to say Merry Christmas to everyone and look for a Happy New Year, I would conclude my report on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Beasley.
Mr. President and members, I guess the first thing I want to say is that when you've been running governments, I've been doing this one place or another for about 40 years now. You think you've seen it all until this year. There's something new. And for most of us, this is something new that I never anticipated. So I've actually been in, I think, probably 25 planning meetings for what to do when pandemics hit. I never really think it's really coming. And it always turns out different than the planning meetings over the time. So it's been an unusual year. I want to thank the council for your leadership and flexibility, the mayor, the administration, the workforce, the public for helping making it work. And it's gone. It's gone about as well as it can. I'm excited that we're turning a corner, though. I'll be glad to see a new year starting in a week and a half. I do want to, on the COVID note, also note, we think all our police and fire forces that want a vaccine are going to have one within a couple of weeks here. We're excited about that. Then we're looking toward the rest of our workforce that we think is essential, the folks, especially out in our plants and streets. We think we're going to be moving to do everything we can to get folks vaccines that want it. Special shout out, congratulations to Brad Tristan, our new sergeant, and
thank you.
And no hazardous duty pay for sitting through a council meeting. A special shout out, And a thanks to Mike Navarre, who's just really been someone that we've been able to rely on as a calm, knowledgeable, experienced hand, and no matter what's coming up. And we'll miss you. We'll still call and hassle you from time to time at the county. And I agree with Tim. You'll need some luck there. It's a crazy shop to run. Great people, crazy shop to run. All right. All right. That's all. Hey, guys, thank you again. I really have enjoyed my year. I enjoy all the years with this crew and look forward to the next one. All right. We got lots of stuff we want to get done. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Ms.
I just wanted to congratulate Chief Navarre in his new position, and I will miss working with you, and it's been a pleasure working with you. And I'd also like to congratulate Sergeant Tristan. He's worked very hard. He is a true leader, as Chief Beacon had stated, and I have no other report.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Mr. Roman.
No report, but I just want to say Merry Christmas to everyone and have a happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing from my standing committee, but I would like to thank Chief Navarre for his leadership and professionalism. And I'm going to miss not seeing you eating meatballs on these special nights like tonight. Also, congratulations, Brad, on your sergeant appointment. Brandon, look forward to working with you, and want to wish everybody a very happy holiday and a safe holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Zale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing from my standing committee, but I just want to say congratulations, Mike, on your election. I hope you do very well down there. Brad, congratulations. It's a great job. You know it is.
Thanks, sir.
I hope you do well. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, but most of all, right here. Right here. Browns, baby. Browns.
Hey, it was fun. They've been fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. So Merry Christmas to all of you.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say something about the team on your jacket.
I need to say nothing about them. You already know. They're not Alabama.
He's blocked all that out from the weekend, as most of us have.
I've already forgotten.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Mr. Seaman.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate Alex Schultz too for his promotion and new job as our TI. I'm sure he'll do a great job, our IT person. And of course, thank you, Chief Navarre, for all your hard work. And as the mayor said one time, you helped groom a new chief, and we've got a great new chief. And congratulations there too. Other than that, Merry Christmas to everybody. Not too much candy or sweet stuff. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Mr. Davish.
I have no report, and I want to wish Mr. Navarre good luck and Merry Christmas to all.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Polliff.
Nothing from my standing committee, but congratulations again to Chief Navarre, and congratulations to Sergeant Tristan and Mr. Schultz. But I also want to say that, it's been a really, really hard year, and I am really, really impressed with everybody in the city of Oregon that has kept us above water and kept our heads above water. I know we still have a ways to go until the end of next year, but I really do think with the fire, police, streets, water department, wastewater department, accounting, everybody, and if I missed anybody, everyone included, I really do think that, kudos goes out to them for keeping the city above water and keeping us afloat and keeping things moving. No one was laid off. There was no great loss of employment. Everyone stayed working. And thank Mike Beasley for that, for making sure everything was running smoothly. So happy Christmas to everybody, and let's hope for a very, very successful new year. So thank you. Merry Christmas.
Well said, Ms. Polliff. Well said. And then Mr. Horniak.
Just briefly, nothing from my standing committee. I as well would like to thank Chief Navarre for his service to our community and wish him well in the sheriff's role in Lucas County. Outside of that, just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a healthy, happy, and prosperous New Year. And thank you to everybody for navigating a very challenging year this year and doing so at an exemplary level. So just really appreciate everything everybody's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. I have no report from my standing committee, but I do have a request to hold a public hearing. This public hearing will be held Monday, January 25th, and hopefully we'll be back in council chambers by January 25th. We'll have to see how it goes and see what the county says, and if things are safe and people are healthy, we can look to move back into the council chambers. But this public hearing is for an application SUE 16419 for special use in a C5 zone district for the purpose of erecting a multifamily housing on the properties described as parcel number 44-24944 and parcel number 44-25031. The applicant is Harry Glitz. The owner is Val V LLC. The location is 4050 Navarre Avenue and 900 South Lallendorf Road. So we will have a public hearing at 7 p.m. and hope to have it in council chambers. If not, we would notify the people and go to a virtual meeting Monday, July 25th, 2021. Council, this was going to be before us previously in this year. This is the apartment complex at the old Dairy Depot location. They brought it back. It was delayed because of COVID concerns. So Monday, January 25th, 2021. Again, I have nothing from my standing committee. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and thank you. It's been a good year working with everybody, and I look forward to next year. So with that, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Meatballs.
Here, meatballs
Sweet
next
meatballs.
year.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Meatballs, Beasley.
We'll get them next year.
All right.
Me and Tina were left here at the city building and we had to eat all the meatballs ourselves.
What?
Yeah.
Today?
We finished them already.
What the hell?
Here too.
And the cookies and the baklava.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Never
Yeah.
ends.
That's it.